And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash the like, and come and join us in the chat. Conversation's been rocking and rolling. About 90 daggum minutes already. We love our community. We love everybody who comes to hang out, chat with each other, offer commentary on the show. We will be pulling some questions, some comments as usual. Today, it is a Wednesday, so that means we've got big game breakdown. Now, is it mid-game breakdown? I don't know. We're going to try to sell it as much as we can. Listen, Wednesdays is our time to actually break into games, things that we find interesting, the matchups to watch, the X factors. When we're each rolling out between 8 to 12 locks on a Thursday, we don't always have time to be able to pick apart games and dive deep the way that we would always want to talk about them. So we're going to give you a look into Tennessee, Florida, maybe a little backyard brawl. Some interesting non-conference action for Kansas State and Missouri. SEC openers on the board as well. Also, the Heisman Trophy conversation. You know, September Heisman always gets awarded, but who can actually win it? We're going to forecast that in just a little bit. But wanted to begin with, you know, in terms of news and notes and headlines, there's just sort of like a running list right now. And we always build it out and we always try to keep you apprised of all the latest, but quarterback injuries are always going to play a role in terms of, you know, us trying to handicap these games, us trying to pull together our expectations. Now I've got a short little list right here, but I know that you always have got a good view of the landscape here. Can I pepper some names and we can kind of look at this? Does that work? All right.
Yes.
Frank Harris.
This is blind, by the way, because I had a checkup this morning. So I have done zero show prep today other than like just the show prep that I do every day for you guys. So
I swear that is better than 75% of the people who talk about college football for a living.
That's probably true.
Bud off the top of his head is already an elite tier. All right. Are we expecting Frank Harris, who quarterback for UTSA? They've got a big game against Army coming up on Friday night. A little bit banged up. Are we expecting him to be limited at all? Or is it, you know, kind of something where you should maybe stay away until we know for sure that we've seen him get out there and play?
Yeah, I think I read that he took a shot at halftime of that Texas State game. I don't think he ran quite as well in the second half. They also lost their right tackle, Mekhi Hart, I think it is. I saw Jeff Trader had a pretty impassioned speech about how it was pretty sad. Like the kid had already battled back for some major injuries, and he was a guy with NFL aspirations, and you know already has a kid. And he was like, "Look, man, when we got the card out or whatever, he was just apologizing to us that he couldn't finish the game." So I really felt for him. Obviously, I don't know, man. Like I have a hard time knowing what to do with this game. Army's offense has looked really bad, but at the same time, these service academies in recent years have started terribly, and then all of a sudden they hit their stride. I wonder if that's like the teams that get them really early in the season are able to rep it more in fall camp. And then all of a sudden, like you get the midweek stuff where, all right, like you don't have a whole lot of time to prep for this stuff. But with the toe, I mean, this is a hard one for me to look at, but I think he'll play. I'd be surprised if he didn't play.
Or do you think you're getting Frank Harris? I mean, we've seen 2 games so far.
Are you getting the receivers?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a UTSA offense that hasn't cracked 30 yet.
Nope.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they've gone up against Houston and they've gone up against Texas State, as you mentioned, and they have both been games that have been a lot more of a grinder than you would have expected given the way that offense performed last season. I find myself looking at UTSA and Frank Harris and thinking that he is probably going to gut it out, but he's probably going to be a little bit banged up. He might not be healthy all season, and this UTSA offense might not be exactly what we would have expected. You know, hey, your offensive coordinator's also gone too. You know, there's a lot of changes that are going on there. So I'm looking at that one, and I think that even if he's playing, I can't consider what I expected preseason.
That American picture to me right now is very like it's too early and too dumb to say this stuff, but I will because it's a show. The American picture looks really clear to me right now. Like it looks like Tulane SMU. And then maybe Memphis, like there's some shot that Memphis is really good. It's hard for me to figure this out because like I think Arkansas State is probably very bad. so it's hard to judge. But like UTSA doesn't look like the same UTSA. Obviously, FAU got handled by Ohio, so I think we're a 3-team race for the American. But you know what? We thought that before, and then UTSA comes back like, "Hey guys, we ain't dead." So I'm probably like an idiot come November for this take. But
especially when you consider how good Tulane looked even without Michael Pratt.
Correct.
It's kind of like, okay, they're going to be at the top no matter what. I mean, competing for the conference title. I'm not saying they're going to win it, but they're going to be in it all year long.
Yeah. UTSA is the only team not in that top 3 that I could see climbing up into the picture.
Agreed. I kind of thought it was like a 5-team race with FAU being like the only team, like obviously not likely, but somewhat likely. Like if you were going to have a Cinderella story, could be them type thing. But they just got destroyed offensive line wise by Ohio. And like Ohio is clearly better on defense, but are they that much better on defense up front? Like Ohio is not known for getting elite defensive linemen. We're probably losing listeners, by the way. But you know what? Hey, like I actually think the more G5 we talk, the better, because no other national show talks any G5. So if we talk like 5 or 10 minutes a day on G5, like we're
I think it's important that we talk about things that are interesting to us. That will generally lead to better conversation.
Ohio, I don't know if you've heard, but it's a wagon.
We've checked our axle status.
All right, would Rourke start for Bama? Because I think he would.
Oh wow!
No, I really do. Like if he had not had the knee, and teams had some certainty that he was going to be able to play this fall,
he's a very good quarterback.
Give Texas's defense some love.
No, it's a good defense, but like the picks Milroe threw were inexcusable. Like those are some of the worst picks you'll ever see.
Not only
they had
that,
nothing to do with Texas defense.
The lack of a comfort level, too. I mean, you could just kind of see when a quarterback's not 100% sure what the defense is doing, where he's supposed to go with the football. I just thought you could kind of tell it's just not working great. You know, like it just did not look comfortable.
Would you go to Buckner then because Tommy Rees is the offensive coordinator?
Did you see what Saban was asked yesterday when he was asked about that? He was asked, did you think about benching Milroe? And he said yes.
Like, well, there you go.
Right. I mean, so like, I think it's one of those things where you probably see them both again this week. You're probably getting them up to speed. And then they kind of have that 3-game stretch, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas A&M. Like, then you kind of figure out which direction you're going to go. Talking to a lot of people, though, I think what'll be fascinating, and I can't, like, it's a position that you never thought you'd be in, but Ty Simpson might be the most talented. At what point do you go to him and say, all right, let's start getting him reps? Like, if they lose a second game, do you just go to him then and say, all right, here we go. We're going to force him, let him learn, and then we're really set up next year for 24?
It depends on the goals.
Right.
Like, I mean, I think initially you're like, this is a really good defense. And I still think it is. I mean, they forced Texas to execute at a very high level, and Texas did so and should be commended for doing so. But if you still think you can, like, maybe if it's a down year across the sport, if Saban still thinks he can win a natty with this team, then you need to be playing for this year.
Right? But that's what I'm saying. If they lose one of those 3,
correct. Yeah,
then I think you start looking for the future.
But are we sure the West champ's only going to lose once in conference play? You are?
No. I'm
right.
I'm backing you up. I do not have enough confidence in anybody in the West to be a 1-loss team showing up to Atlanta on the first Saturday in December.
Is the SEC West just the Big Ten West with better PR? Sound off in the comments.
ACC Coastal. Everybody's going 4-4. Somebody suggested that one already. Cam Rising. All right, Utah's playing Weber State. You're probably not going to risk it.
Weber State blitzes like crazy.
He's not.
I would not play him
again. But off the top of his head, Weber State.
No, okay, I know this because BYU took Weber State's DC, and like they're very aggressive. And I was trying to get a feel for what BYU was going to do for week 1. So I watched them. Like, this is kind of fun. They're aggressive.
But when Utah returns, they're going to play again Weber State this weekend. I imagine that'll be more Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson. Are we expecting when they return to Pac-12 play, or actually their Pac-12 opener against UCLA in week 4, you think we see Cam Rising back in action?
I do.
I'm sure that's the plan.
Yeah, because look, Whittingham has already said he's been cleared for full return to practice. If you don't play him after saying that 2 weeks, like he said that pre-Baylor. So if you don't play him against UCLA and UCLA plays to its absolute ceiling, they could beat you. In fact, if you don't play him, UCLA will beat you. I'm fairly certain of that. So, yeah, I think he's definitely back next week. I would price the game power ratings wise like Cam Rising is back.
Do you see they're starting Nate Johnson too? They're going to give him the nod.
I mean, look, eventually that kid was going to turn into a pumpkin, with all due respect, to make the Cinderella reference, which I guess I made last week and people didn't understand. Like, how the carriage turns back into a pumpkin at midnight or whatever it is in the Cinderella story. Hopefully I get the thing right.
At Cal, Sam Jackson is back in action after getting a little banged up in the very first game. You think that he is going to be holding on to that position? We did see Ben Finley take some snaps as well against Auburn. How do you see that Cal quarterback situation playing out?
I don't know that it matters that much. I mean, like, neither of these guys are good. Jaden Ott got banged up. That's the one I'm worried about, because he's legit back. Yeah.
All right. Well,
sorry. Let me see. Will I adjust my power rating Sam Jackson or Ben Finley? I will not.
Sam Jackson's wallet. Sam Jackson's wallet says Jag M
Effer. Okay, so then Blake Shapen not back yet, right? We still got another week or two on Shapen.
I have
he was out 3 or 4. So
yeah, I have him as ask for week 5. So that's kind of the timeline.
Ooh, I had September 23rd, but could be more delayed than that. That's the one that feels like you absolutely need to have him in order to turn this thing around, to avoid this thing. Robertson, gutsy performance, back-breaking mistakes at the very end, and they got good wide receivers, man. I would like to see them play better at the quarterback position. Any other quarterback injuries that stand out that we should be tracking, or other injuries? You mentioned Jaden Ott, Micah Bernard for Utah. Also, that's a notable injury to keep an eye on. What other big injuries stand out from the first couple weeks of the season?
I think Bud mentioned it on Monday to keep an eye on it. John Rice Plumlee for UCF.
They announced he's going to miss a couple weeks.
Yeah, he's out for a few weeks. And I think he's out for their Big 12 opener, which is rough for them. He's such he struggled against Boise, kind of like what you get from John Rice Plumlee, where it's either all or nothing. You get him in the run game, but he's so perfect for that system. If he could just clean up the mistakes, man.
Yeah. I will say that staff, they've, back when they were at Auburn, they've certainly overcome subpar quarterback play to pull games out before. It's not, I don't think they're crazy quarterback dependent.
A big one for anybody who had the UConn under 5.5. Joe Fagnano is out for the year. He is the transfer quarterback who came with the new OC, won the starting job. He's hurt. He's done for the year. Clearly, UConn was not incredibly happy with its other QB options to bring him in. So that could be something to monitor going forward with the Huskies, especially, maybe in a betting perspective from week to week.
Completely agree. Yeah. If you were somebody who liked over last week, that was extremely concerning in the first quarter. I was like, oh God, this is because the backup can't play.
Taquan Robinson, come on down. Robertson, come on down. We're going to get back to some figured out offense. All right. Coming up on the other side, there's names at the top of the Heisman Trophy board. There's names that have been rising in the Heisman Trophy board. And really the list of names that could get to New York as a finalist, and it could be anybody. Anybody could get to New York. But who can actually win the Heisman Trophy? We'll get into that and more next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, born out of a discussion offline, specifically on, I think it was Shedeur, right? Shedeur Sanders. Can Colorado win enough, or maybe it was in the show, an instant reaction. Can Colorado win enough that Shedeur Sanders could win a Heisman Trophy? Okay, so who can win a Heisman Trophy? Like, Danny, if you were to start going down the board, or whether getting the circle together, how many players, or who are the players that come to mind in terms of you think that they've got a team around them, the individual excellence to be named the most outstanding player in college football at the end of the season?
So I think there's a pretty clear-cut formula. I think you have to be on a contending team late. Let's be honest, you kind of have to be a quarterback unless you're just freakishly talented. think you have to have gaudy stats. I think you have to be up like in the top 10 of passing categories. So I think that whittles it down. I think you kind of have to play at a brand, like a team, like the group of 5 you're not going to happen at a group of 5. So I think there's some criteria that you have to meet. That being said, do you want me to just rattle off the list and tell you who I think has a legit chance?
Yeah. Let's see where we draw because there's a line that we're going to draw at some point where you're like, all right, like
you know what I never thought we'd see is a back-to-back. And I know he hasn't gotten to like the meat of the schedule because there's only one way to go when you're the favorite. And then when you're trying to go back to back as the favorite, the first time you stumble, they're going to ding you. Like it's almost impossible to come back from. I still kind of don't think we see it, but man, Caleb Williams is special. I mean, he's the number 1 overall pick. I thought there was going to be a debate between him and Drake May. I don't think there's going to be one for the number 1 overall pick. He's really starting to separate. But I still think he can win it. So I would put him in there for sure, although I don't think he would. Quinn Ewers, the game he just had, the year he has, Texas, they're right there. Jordan Travis, again, I think it helps, Florida State being back on the national stage. He's got the talent around him. He can, put up massive stats. Sam Hartman, I think, is a realistic one. Notre Dame QB, are you kidding me? And, for what he's brought to that team so far, big game stage, he's going to have one in a couple weeks. Like he's got the opportunity. Michael Penix Jr., yeah, I think he can do it. I mean, he had a credible year last year. If they win the Pac-12, I think they could even be a 10-2 Pac-12.
And if they win the Pac-12, Danny, it's going to be on his arm. So it's going to be on like a 4,500-yard, 40-touchdown type season.
Yeah. So we got him. Everybody's in agreement there. JJ McCarthy needs to pick it up stat-wise, so that he can get. But
they're playing it like an Air Force tempo. Right. Have you noticed this? Like Michigan does not give a damn about these games. Now this may change Saturday. I don't know, but like
his efficiency is pretty excellent though.
No doubt. But like
Isn't he number 1? I think he's leading the country in efficiency.
I don't think these games are fixed, but it's like they have a handshake agreement with the opponent. It's like, all right, we're gonna go crazy slow. You go crazy slow. Minimize the snaps. Minimize the opportunities for anybody to get hurt. Let's get out of here. Let's have a nice rest of the day. It's like they don't care in terms of getting reps in games. Clearly they care to win the game.
They have looked like scrimmages, yes.
Dude, these are unserious games.
You guys give some. I have more, but I don't want to hog the whole conversation.
I will say, going back to the Caleb Williams thing, I think he can win it 2 years in a row if he keeps playing this way, because last year they didn't win the Pac-12 and they didn't get to the playoff. If they do that, I think those are some kind of boosts of like you improved on last season. But also, statistically, he's got 13 total touchdowns through 3 games. Do you know how many snaps he's played in the second half of games?
Oh, snaps? I don't know. I know he hasn't played a fourth
25.
quarter yet, right?
30. He's played 30 snaps in the second half. He's only played 6 snaps in the fourth quarter this season.
Okay.
So imagine if USC was leaving him in for the full 4 quarters. Now, clearly, if they wanted to, they would, and they could push him to win the Heisman. But I don't think that's at the top of their priority list. So, yeah. Other than that, names you haven't mentioned, I mean, did you say Quinn Ewers?
Yeah, he said Quinn second, and it was like that's the one where you're starting to present it. And there's something to
Bo Nix. Oh,
Caleb,
sorry.
Caleb jumps up to the picture in November, sort of for an absence of other obvious picks. I mean, there's the way that we can look at them all individually, but then very tough to forecast here on September 13th. What's everybody else doing? Like that's where Michael Penix, to me, if you want to get off of that tier and start to get to 10-1 or more on the Heisman odds board, that's the one where Caleb has a little bit of a slip up. Texas takes a ridiculous loss somewhere late in the season, and just Penix has just been steady, like 400 yards a game, 400 yards a game, 400 yards a game. And all of a sudden he builds up this profile where, like you mentioned, they're 10-2. Maybe they're just playing for the Pac-12 title, but he's just been rock solid. There's nothing really that you can single-handedly circle on him. Penix has a high Heisman ceiling based on the numbers. JJ McCarthy and Sam Hartman, that's he's the leader of an old power. He's getting it done for the team. Even though Audric Estime would like a word, the Notre Dame defense would like a word, Blake Corum would like a word, and there's a lot around them. But I think that like a JJ McCarthy proposition, I think that the Sam Hartman proposition are based on team success. I think Michael Penix has that individual success type advantage that Hartman and McCarthy probably don't have.
You know who might be worth a long shot bet right now? He just finally got named the starter yesterday.
Yes, I'm glad
Kyle
you went there.
McCord.
Yeah.
Would you rather have, if you had a ticket, would you rather have him or Carson Beck?
Kyle McCord.
Ooh. I don't know. I think it's a little shaky still. I think he could struggle.
But Kyle McCord
And
has like Marvin
tougher.
Harrison and Emeka Egbuka to throw to. Carson Beck doesn't have those guys. And Georgia is going to be Georgia. Like, I just don't think he's going to put up crazy numbers, especially with Mike Bobo calling the plays. I mean, McCord could finish the year with 45 touchdowns still. Like, Ohio State's in that same similar situation with Michigan, where I don't feel like they've really gotten going yet.
I'd rather have Drew Aller than Kyle McCord.
I that's a reasonable stance. I don't know if I don't agree with it, but it's a reasonable one.
There's also the impact, I think, like the story of bringing Penn State to another level plays really well. You know, like if you're Kyle McCord, you got to really, really shine, or else people are like, you're throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr. and you're throwing, you got all these weapons that you're working with. What did you guys say? I missed Shedeur or Travis Hunter? If you were going to take one, who would you take? You would take Shedeur over. I would take Travis Hunter, I think.
I would take Travis Hunter.
I would take Travis, yeah.
Because to win, to get to New York, I think Shedeur can get to New York, and I think Colorado will keep him throwing. But I think here's the problem with the Shedeur Heisman talk, and he's been much better than I think any of us on the show thought he'd be, and I think a lot of us thought he could be good. If you're telling me that Colorado is deep into the season in the playoff conversation, they're going to have to pull upsets at Oregon, host USC. Now, Arizona State looks like they're just maybe a dead team walking because of the injuries, but whatever. Stanford, they'll beat. Then you get a bye week. Then at UCLA, okay, Oregon State, Arizona, at Washington State, at Utah. I mean, they're going to be underdogs, guys, in like 6 more games this season, maybe 7. If you're going to pull these massive upsets, I mean, obviously Shedeur has to keep playing well, but you're going to have some vote stealing stuff from Travis Hunter because Hunter's going to have to make special plays. TCU scored 42 with 2 end zone interceptions on them. Like, other teams will score 60 on Colorado. To win these games, you're going to have Travis Hunter probably making special plays, like turnover type stuff on defense, and get the two-way thing, which means he's going to steal votes from Shedeur. So either they don't make the playoff, or obviously they're not going to make the playoff. Either they don't contend for the playoff, which means I think in that scenario, Shedeur could get invited to New York because he's going to have the crazy numbers, right? And like last week, they were trying to get him numbers. It looks like they were throwing up big super late, and he took some shots. It's sort of like it's a catch-22. If they're actually somehow in contention, which I very much doubt, Hunter's going to vote steal. If they're not, I think Shedeur can get to New York, but he clearly can't win it on like a 7-5 type team.
They're 8-4. What's the worst they could go? Yeah, I think they got to go 9-3. I don't think they do. I think either one is a waste of your money.
No doubt. Yeah, it's especially at these prices because like they're getting so much media love. You're getting so much, kind of amateur money in the market.
Like that does help a ton. I mean, it's such a shallow, casual voter type of ward that the more they're on, and the fact that game day's going to the Colorado State game. I mean, their numbers were off the charts. Their numbers were the same as Alabama, Texas. Did you see that for the ratings? The same amount of people.
Well, but that's an ESPN game versus a network game.
Yes, and ESPN got dinged because the whole
Florida State LSU was way bigger than Texas.
Not that much bigger. That was like 9.2, and they had
but it was the Spectrum outage.
Yeah, that's what I think is throwing off some of these numbers.
We got to compare ESPN games to ESPN games because the network games are always going to smoke them.
But the brand of Deion, I mean, how many other coaches at halftime of the first game we've even seen these players would mention the Heisman Trophy?
Yeah, exactly.
None. But it does help, and all of a sudden it plants that seed. So there's
8-4 or better, and an absence of some combination of Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, the West Coast. Don't forget, these are votes that are split geographically. Tom and I have votes that are considered the national votes, but then there are South votes, there are West Coast votes, Southwest votes. And I apologize to Chris Houston if I just didn't list them correctly. I'm sure he'll come yell at me. But
I'm a voter. I don't even know I think I'm national.
Yeah, I would assume so. I mean, like being at CBS, I would assume that's what it is. But if there is an absence of those other West Coast quarterbacks because you've only got 3 spots on the ballot. If Caleb Williams is up there and Bo Nix and Michael Penix, then yeah, it's going to be a lot tougher for either one of them. But I'm saying if those other quarterbacks fall apart, and they're 8-4 and better, and somebody's just rolling up to fill out a ballot, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Deion's son," and that is unfair to Shador a lot of times. But when it comes to Heisman voting, like I think that's going to be an advantage.
And the story is great. I mean, if they go from 1 to 8, 7-game turnaround, I still think it's 9, but 8 wouldn't be hard to believe.
The other reason why 8-4 doesn't work is because 8-4 means you lost to 2 other Heisman candidates in conference.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Can Deion get Heisman votes?
Did Deion?
Can he? Like, do you think Deion will get any Heisman votes?
Yes, I think he'll get some write-ins. I think he will. Why not? The first one ever.
I've never we didn't mention Bo Nix. Nobody's mentioned it.
He can, absolutely. I wouldn't pick him, but he absolutely can. He should be on the conversation.
What about the kid who threw 5 touchdowns against Texas A&M on Saturday? Plays for a big brand, a team that gets a lot of attention when it's playing well.
Definitely. He should be in the conversation.
Yeah.
What about the kid he lost to?
If they bounce back, yes. But that's one of those games where it's going to get looked at and be like, well, you lost this game. But the commenters have mentioned quite a bit, which I think is a legit from a player perspective, but one of the things from the other angles of this that hurts him, Will Howard at Kansas State. Will Howard can have a great season at Kansas State. The fact is, unless he has like an incredible, remarkable record-setting season, it's hard to think the Kansas State QB is going to win the Heisman no matter what.
And with those receivers, he won't.
Same thing with Riley Leonard. You know, like I saw somebody propose to him. He's a great quarterback. They're going to make their hay in the NFL, you know, but they're not Heisman candidates.
What if?
Do you think Kansas State's receivers are like bad?
I just don't think they're special enough to really get him on the radar like that.
To separate him, yeah.
Okay.
None of us have said the name that I was just on the soapbox for last year.
Marvin Harrison?
No, he could win. Drake May.
Oh no, yeah.
He's having a mid-season so far.
Very mid.
They're running the ball a lot.
Yeah.
And you haven't had Tez Walker. You didn't have Nate McCollum, and Kobe Paysauer and JJ Jones are fine, and the tight ends are good, but it's a different offense right now, and maybe an offense that the changes are going to make it better for North Carolina later in the season. But let's see, what do we have so far? 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions through 2 games.
Yeah.
Mid.
Yeah.
I left him in the QB power rankings this week because he's that good, but it's just he's hanging on by a thread at this point. He needs to put up some numbers soon.
I read that column this morning, and I'm glad to see that you didn't bow to any kind of pressure. Like none of the top 10 from the SEC, none of the next 5 from the SEC.
Nope. There was like when I was sitting down.
Top 10. The quarterbacks are not elite in the SEC.
Yeah. I saw Peter Burns arguing this morning. I mean, obviously I have a lot of respect for Peter, but like, bro, if we think there's 15 quarterbacks better, look like he was arguing that Bama's secondary was the problem against Texas. Like it was not. Bama's secondary forced Texas, who has a really, really talented quarterback, to make really tough plays. Quarterback lost the game for Alabama, and how they utilized that quarterback, right? Because they probably misjudged his skill set, I would think. If you don't have a top 15 quarterback in the country in your leag, and that might be aggressive, it might just be top 10, but I'm pretty damn sure there's 10 quarterbacks that are
I would say top
way
20.
better than what the SEC has. Sure. Then that is a problem. I don't want to rehash Monday's show, but
here's one for Chip. This is for you. This is a wouldn't it be hilarious?
Wouldn't it be hilarious Heisman finalist? All right.
What if we get to New York and that cold, December night, and Clemson's Cade Klubnik isn't there, but Oregon State's DJ Uiagalelei is?
Oh, man.
Amazing. It would amaze me on so many levels.
I will say I would not bet Klubnik now, but the last 3 quarters of that FCS game, it did look like it started to click more for him. So there is some chance that they go off. They're playing faster. Like he'll have an opportunity for numbers. He will score a lot of points this year. If they upset Florida State, like the time to bet Klubnik for the Heisman will have been too late.
Oh, you mean win?
If they win the game. Yeah.
By the way,
Exactly.
Klubnik and DJU have the exact same Heisman odds right now at 40-1.
That's beautiful.
I would rather have Klubnik at 40.
Oh, hey, let's do this. Okay, right now, 40-1, DJU or Cade Klubnik. Go. Who would you rather have?
Cade.
Klubnik.
Yeah. Brand, powerhouse.
Oregon State doesn't throw the ball very much.
Yeah, it's true too.
Yeah, DJ's in the same situation as Will Howard. It's like he's in that kind of offense and he's playing for a school that's just not going to get the national attention.
Yeah. Question from the chat: has a grad transfer ever won the Heisman Trophy?
Yeah, there's been like 4 of them.
Really?
A grad transfer?
Oh, a grad transfer. I was going to say, Burrow transferred. Didn't he a grad transfer?
Jalen Hurts was a grad transfer, wasn't he?
Yeah, there were a bunch.
Was Burrow a grad transfer?
I
don't
think
know.
so.
Burrow wasn't a grad.
Oh,
Burrow was
sat
still
out?
an undergraduate when he transferred.
He did
But
not.
Jalen Hurts.
I think he was a grad transfer.
Ooh.
Yeah,
2
so
years
Burrow
of
was a grad.
eligibility as a
Burrow
graduate.
was a grad? Okay.
Yeah.
Because he played all of 2018 and was
But he
pretty good.
redshirted.
And then 2019 obviously lit the world on fire. Yeah, I think so. I think Joe Burrow
played 2 years, didn't he?
Yeah, he played 18 and 19.
Well, how
But
did
he
he have 2 years of
redshirted and sat out
eligibility if he
too,
was still a
didn't he?
grad transfer?
Well, you'd have eligibility left if you redshirted, which I think he did. Stayed 2 years, so you're 3 years at Ohio State. That's
Yeah,
enough to graduate. Guys
He
are
definitely
graduating.
graduated Ohio State.
This is pre-COVID. That's the thing. The eligibility rules are just completely. People are playing for like 20 years now. It's hard to.
Senior? Yeah.
There's one other name that we haven't mentioned. But I mean, he fits the criteria. Dylan Gabriel.
He won't be the starter by the end of the year.
Yeah,
They've been playing Arnold a lot too. Like
I think
in
Arnold's going to take over.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man.
Remember,
Dylan Gabriel.
Bud and I have been like hardcore on this since the very first game.
Since Arkansas State.
Yes.
You're like, did Dylan Gabriel, it's a phenomenal September opinion. Has Dylan Gabriel ruined his shot to finish the season as the starting quarterback by scoring too many touchdowns in the first half?
Yes.
The galaxy on that is amazing. All right. Coming up on the other side, there are some interesting matchups here. Now, there's not like the bangers that we have got coming up in week 4 when you've got Penn State and Iowa and Ohio State and Notre Dame and Clemson and Florida State. But, we're going to learn a lot about some of these teams, especially these Tennessee Volunteers. We'll get into that and more next.
We don't get a try run, we only get one life. So enjoy the ride. Just live your life, one day at a time. And enjoy the
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, our thanks to the incredible graphics and animations team for our big game breakdown intro right there, getting you set for our look at some of the biggest matchups, what we're looking for, keys to the game, storylines, X factors, and more. Let's start with Tennessee's trip to Gainesville, where, yes, Florida has had a large advantage in the swamp over the course of this series. But this is not the regular Florida team. Not what we've seen through its single game against FBS competition, albeit that was against Utah in Salt Lake City. Not an easy place for anyone to go and win. So they light up McNeese State. They get the good feels back. Okay. Now they're got a chance to really turn this thing around. All the negativity from coming out of that first Thursday night loss, all of the doom and gloom about the Billy Napier era, you can reverse a lot of it if you can take down the Vols here on Saturday in the swamp. Danny, what are some of the sort of matchup angles or storylines? Like if you want to go big picture with this, we can go nitty gritty or big picture. Going to try to hit them both here before we move on.
I had for this game the Florida offensive line versus Tennessee's front seven. Tennessee's been getting after it. Number 1 in the country in sacks, up there in tackles for loss too. I think they're second with 25. against Florida's offensive line. They have to protect Graham Mertz, who I think has done a pretty nice job. I mean, he's completing 74% of his passes. He's got some mobility too. I think this is where Napier actually does a pretty good job. I think he'll have him getting the ball out of his hands. So I think that's one of the huge ones. And then the other thing is Tennessee's been running the ball a little bit more efficiently than they have. And I think for the Gator defense, they have 0 takeaways. So they got to somehow create a way to, figure out a way to slow down Tennessee's offense. And I would say it starts with slowing down the run. I still like Joe Milton. Clearly, like he hasn't started off to be, Hendon Hooker just, there's no drop off, a little bit of a rusty start in the last game. But I think you try to figure out what he is if you're the Florida defense.
This is by far the toughest environment Milton has ever started the game in, right? Because he started at Michigan, but that was the COVID year, so there were no fans in the stands in Big Ten games. He played like 4 or 5 snaps, I think, at Ohio State in like 2018-ish in a blowout. It'll be interesting to see how he handles it, right? He has not operated the offense smoothly so far. It doesn't mean it can't or that it won't be effective. And maybe you get the game where he has all the misses and it happened to be against Austin Peay, but it doesn't look like it looked with Hooker because I don't think he processes as quickly as Hooker does, and he's just not as accurate, right? Like Hooker would always take what was there, it felt like, and just kept the thing moving. I'm very curious to see how Florida plays this because Florida on the defensive interior, I feel like is pretty damn good, and they're big. I think Florida is not twitchy at all from a pass rush perspective. Like they don't have like good, quick edge pass rushers on this team so far. And I got some young guys. We'll see how they develop. But coordinator Austin Armstrong led the country last year in blitz rate when he was at Southern Miss. But Tennessee is kind of a tough team to blitz a lot because you're coming from such width. We talked about this on the breakout video on our YouTube channel if you want to go watch. And they like to do a lot of corner blitzing and whatnot there in Gainesville. Can you do that against this offense really well? I don't know. So I'm really curious to see how they play it. The other option is to go back to my catchphrase. They could play red zone roulette. How well can Tennessee run the football in the swamp? Can you get them off schedule a little bit? And then they get down there, the compressed area. I do think that Florida could be a pretty good red zone team because of the size that it has up front. That's kind of what they did to Utah last year when they won the ball game. So I'm curious to see. Georgia last year didn't try to pattern match Tennessee at all. They just dropped a lot of guys, and they actually won playing kind of a lighter box, right? And they said, okay, we're going to beat you and play a man down in the box base, a man like -1 a man, not like a man down depth wise. That's interesting to me. Like I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they'll mix it up some, obviously, but Milton has never really handled like people around him in pressure well, and doesn't. He holds the ball quite a long time. But yeah, on the other side, Florida's offense just cannot have mistakes. Because they don't have the talent to overcome mistakes. They have to be really clean and play really slow.
Oh,
That's the
Wow. Spreading.
the mute button.
Mute
Got
button.
Got him.
Sorry, I've got phlegm, so I've had to clear my throat a lot. So I'm muting the mic.
No excuses here.
You remember last year, like when Tennessee finally like really grabbed national attention when it beat Alabama. The one thing it did in that game repeatedly was burn Alabama deep. Jalen Hyatt just bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb. And that was the theme of Tennessee's offense all last season. Hendon Hooker was killing people. In comes Joe Milton, who's got the crazy rocket launcher arm. But yet, if you look, last year, Tennessee ranked 10th nationally in explosive pass rate at 20.1%. Do you know where Tennessee is right now after a couple games?
Oh, like 50?
99th
Woo!
in explosive pass rate at 12.1%. Joe Milton is averaging 6.8 yards per attempt because you know what's more important in this offense than having a really strong arm? Having an accurate arm. And that's what Hooker had that Milton does, and it has really impacted their ability to move the ball. So going to like what Bud was saying with Florida, I think he's right. They can play red zone roulette in this game because to this point, Tennessee hasn't really shown the ability to beat you with the big plays over the top to make short drives. They have to go down the field and get into the red zone. And that's where Florida's been good because defensively overall, they've been very solid. They're top 4 in defensive success rate. Now, Tennessee, as Danny was mentioning, has been far more disruptive, but also Tennessee played Austin Peay, so I don't know how much you can really put into that at this point. It's just, I am not high on Florida. Like, what I have seen from the Gators so far this year does not make me think this team is going to win a lot of games. It's going to be all like very successful. But I have some concerns about Tennessee in that I just don't think the Vols will be able to pull away in this game. And when that's the case, like, I don't think Florida can keep up on the scoreboard over 60 minutes. But I don't think Tennessee can pull away, that means we're just one Joe Milton mistake. If he holds on to the ball a little too long, or he misses receiver by a little too much, could really determine the outcome of this game. So if I'm Tennessee, I'm a little nervous going into this one. I think that they're much more vulnerable than you would have anticipated even, a couple weeks ago.
So do you dare him to beat you deep and try to play more aggressive, or do you just kind of give him the short stuff? Because he's kind of missed some of the deep stuff, and Tennessee's had some drops for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think early in the game I would be aggressive, and if
So
I have to adjust after that, if I have to adjust, I adjust. But early in the game, I'm coming, especially because the game, I'm coming early. I'm going to make him do it.
The other aspect of this is your defensive plan probably has to be sort of correlated to your offensive plan. Like, do you think you can block Tennessee's front? Do you think you can score enough points without turnovers? Right? Like, what does Florida think it can score without turnovers? 17?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was going to say not more than 24.
Yeah, because this offense is like not good, right? They clearly, like, they missed on some of these transfers they took on the O-line. They're using a lot of true freshmen at receiver. Mertz is one of your better players on offense, and that's a major problem.
Y'all's read of the game is screaming under, by the way. Like, the way that Florida wins this game is to keep it in the 20s.
But it's entirely dependent on pace. If Florida scores early, right, then this game could go under because they try to sit on the lead. If Tennessee gets up, Tennessee will not slow down. And then Florida can't play this, basically service academy pace that they really want to play. And they have to throw the ball more, and then Mertz starts throwing picks.
There's a couple of spots. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, too, like, when you're talking about accuracy as well, like, you could complete 64% of your passes, and it seems like that's pretty accurate. But, like, it's the finer, like, the really accurate guys, they're completing those passes, and they're keeping you on the run. They're keeping you on a deep post where you catch it in stride and you score. Or if it's a crossing route, you keep him running. He runs away from the defense as opposed to, it's behind me. And then all of a sudden you have to slow down and you're tackled for a 4-yard gain as opposed to, running it across and up the field. That's the area I want to see too, like where Milton kind of, and that's where I think in these quarterback driven systems, that's where you excel. And that's what you want, is when your quarterback is just really accurate with the football. The other thing too, you mentioned the Hooker game versus Alabama. There were times under duress when he took big shots and he just, stared right down the barrel of the gun and made big plays. That's something we don't know, Milton hasn't done yet.
Yeah. Well, I think we do know that he has struggled with people around him in his career. Like, he does not navigate the pocket very well compared to what Hooker did.
There are a lot of spots on the schedule where, only 2 games of sample size. If this is a bigger game, and a lot of the teams we're talking about here in big game breakdown are, this is a bigger game than what they had last week. Tennessee is an example of that. It is easy to be able to say, well, yeah, of course they were thinking ahead to Florida. How much of Tennessee's, bumps in that Austin Peay game would you give the grace of, sandwich spot between the UVA opener and Florida? Even though UVA being what it is, it's like, this is definitely the spot that you would have overlooked. Are you expecting a significantly improved performance almost across the board from the Vols, or is that something, or is there something from that matchup that is signaling like real lasting alarm bells for you?
Did Cade Mays play in that game? Jordan, I watched it, but I wasn't paying attention to who was playing center. Is Mays back for them? He did not.
No.
Or not Cade Mays, Cooper Mays, excuse me. The center.
Cade plays for the Panthers, but yeah, he did not.
I think you're totally on something, because remember when we talked about Texas versus Rice?
Mm-hmm.
It's similar. It's just kind of normal. I think you game plan differently. Your players aren't as up emotionally, and you're holding some things back, even that you have in your back pocket, because you want to save it for the bigger opponent. So yeah, I think that's a worthy.
Florida seemed to dump it all out because they needed to create some positivity. It's like, we have got to flip these vibes around right now. We're setting records right here today in Gainesville.
Yes.
All right, so we think Cooper will be back according to Jordan. So
Because all right, so here's what's gone well. Because the Milton criticisms are accurate, but they're running the ball pretty
Milton's
well.
not,
Right?
but
There you go. Let me see if I can give it to you. There you go. All right. Like Jalen Wright and Jabari Small is a pretty good 1-2 punch, right? And that ground game is rolled up over 200 some odd yards, averaging about 5-7 yards a pop. Like that's a pretty good thing to have in your back pocket to be able to take it on the road. I don't know, man, I'm very curious to see if Tennessee really, because if Tennessee goes in and loses and 6.5 point spread means it's not crazy that Tennessee would lose, we're taking Tennessee and doing the same thing that we did with Alabama, doing the same thing that we did with LSU. You are not in that upper tier. It is going to be Georgia and then a wide gap. And it may already exist, but at least in terms of the way that we look at it. So I'm very excited to see if Tennessee is going to be able to go in there and flip around some of the results that it had against Austin Peay.
Oh, if Florida wins, it's going to be Georgia and like 13 SEC flag waivers in that league.
I love going out just with a flamethrower to the Southeastern Conference. The theme for the 2023 season is the SEC stinks.
can I ask you to go along that same lines? What are we calling? We're calling this the mid-game breakdown?
Yeah.
How many SEC conference games do we have on the rundown?
Isn't it just 2? Oh, I mean, we might not hit
Got
the
3.
last
Mid-game breakdown.
All right.
SEC.
Oh, Georgia, South Carolina. Okay.
Yeah.
one. Hey,
I'm
listen,
live blogging that.
Not
one on
contractually obligated to discuss this game at all.
3:30 p.m. Eastern time. You can watch it on CBS. You can stream it on Paramount Plus. No, we're not going to that one next. Let's go backyard brawl, baby. Pitt, West Virginia. Pitt coming off, like, there's no excuse. Like, Pitt can't be like, oh, we were holding something back. No, you got walloped. All right. Phil Jakovic did not look good under pressure. You were not able to run the ball as well as Cincinnati was. Cincinnati is not going to be. We discussed it a little bit on Monday as well. So what kind of response do you see from the Panthers as they go to West Virginia to try to get a win right here?
You mentioned not good under pressure. Phil Jakovic has been under pressure way too much, which is kind of surprising. I mean,
I know. I thought that offensive line was going to be good.
Me too. He's been pressured on 45% of the dropbacks. I think Pitt's in trouble. And and this was one of those years where like, oh, they flying under the radar. We're not talking about them enough. And, Pat Narduzzi at the end of the year is like, you guys all doubted us. I think it's the other way. But I think this is a tough game for them. Garrett Green's pretty good on explosive plays. Can he hit them for a couple over the top? I think it's good. But, we were talking about the unders before. I think this could be an uglier, more of a defensive-minded game.
I think so too. Like I'm weirdly confident in West Virginia's floor here.
Mm-hmm.
Like West Virginia's not good, but I'm fairly sure they're not terrible. Just because they can block people, they seem to have some idea of what they want to be on offense. Not necessarily good offense, but like they're not. If you can block, like you're not going to be a terrible offense because you can buy time and do things. And the defense has been a little better than I thought they'd be up front. I don't know about the back end. We'll see about that. I don't think Penn State's receivers are amazing, and they kind of had their way with West Virginia's DBs. So,
it's strange to think of where we were all off season and even just going in where it was like this game, we were really worried about Neil Brown, and then losing this game, West Virginia might be staring like a 1-2 start with a big game coming up, blah, blah, blah. I'm with Danny, though. I'm more confident in West Virginia right now than I am in Pitt because, as he mentioned, like the pressure rate. Here's the thing about the West Virginia defense so far. It's been very like boom or bust. They're 6th in havoc rate. So they create a whole lot of, chaos, even though they're only 58th in success rate. So if they don't get to you in the backfield, you can get to them. So that's something Pitt's going to have to try to do. But as Danny mentioned, Pitt ranks 106th nationally in sack rate allowed and 125th in the pressure rate allowed, the 44% of pressures on dropbacks. They are not giving Jurkovec any time. West Virginia is going to bring pressure, and West Virginia has shown an ability to be disruptive in its first game this year. I mean, they gave that Penn State offensive line is supposed to be really good. West Virginia gave it some problems in that very first game. Penn State won the game, But that was kind of like a red flag for me for both Penn State and kind of like an eyebrow perker for, West Virginia. And I think going into this game against this Pitt offensive line that, like you said, was supposed to be good on the road, I kind of like West Virginia in this matchup.
This is the chat's just going next level here. Pat Narduzzi, so committed to that Pitt program, he's doing everything in his power to not be on Michigan State's short list this year. That's what you got to be happy with.
Or maybe he's doing a Kiffin right now.
No, I was going to say, do you buy in on Pitt turning it around? Because Pitt has that horrible game against Cincinnati. Now all of a sudden Mel Tucker's suspended. Pat's like, okay, all right, here we go. Come on, boys, let's get it done right now. No, I'm with y'all. I'm a little bit concerned about where the Panthers are at. Kansas State, led by the aforementioned Will Howard, who's having a very strong start to the season. Short road favorite at Missouri. Tom, do you think the Alpha Nerds got something cooked up?
If he does, it's probably pretty bland and no spices, because have you seen the Missouri offense this year? It is very good at staying on schedule, but there are just no big plays. Like they are 18th in success rate. They're 14th in 3-and-out rate. So they're getting first downs. They're moving the ball. They're putting together drives, but they have to put together drives because they're 86th in explosive rate. They are not getting big chunk plays that you need to be successful in the long run and to win games. And going against this Kansas State defense, I would wonder if they're going to be able to do it this week. My suspicion is no, because Kansas State's defense has been very good to start the year. Of course, their schedule, like Troy, and I can't remember who the FCS team they played, hasn't been the most explosive offenses that they've faced at this point so far this year. But I just think that based on the history of that program last year and what I've seen from it this year, even against inferior comp, it's hard for me to say Kansas State's going to go into Mizzou and win on the road against an SEC team. And I think you have to give Mizzou some chance because of that. But this is looking like it's probably going to be another SEC loss to a Power 5 conference to me.
I mean, we call him the Alpha Nerd, but it looks like he left his book bag at home, or at least the notebook that tells him when to go for fourth down.
Thank you.
Drinkwitz has been one of the absolute worst in the country this year in terms of making the incorrect, by the blackjack card decision on when to punt or go, and really in games in which they were not in serious jeopardy of losing. Now, you would think he'd want to leave his offense out there because A, it's the correct thing to do to help you win the game, and B, it's an offense that needs work. But to me, it also suggests they do have some untapped potential. Like, this offense is not great, so there's a pretty good chance that you get bogged down on your opponent's fourth and two, like 42-yard line, and you have 4th and 2. You're going to need to go for that probably to win Kansas State, because I don't think you're going to have that many scoring opportunities. So there's some chance that Missouri unlocks something here. Maybe they've just been playing possum. I don't know.
The team you mean the team that was like only beat Middle Tennessee by 1 score?
And
but weren't they up pretty good in the middle, like kind of came back?
Well, they weren't up pretty good. If getting back into the game is 13 points.
And they couldn't run the ball versus Middle Tennessee. And now they got to, and I'm assuming you want to try to run the ball against Middle Tennessee. And now they're going against the best rush defense in the country in Kansas State. Like, I don't, this one I think could be ugly. Did you see Eli too as well? I don't know if it was shots fired, if he has a relationship with Colin Klein, but did you see what he said? He was doing his press conference and he was like, yeah, their offense coordinator. He's like, what are they? He's like, is it CK? Like, he just gave his initials and he kind of acted like he didn't know who it was.
Well, he's messing around.
Yeah, I would think they got to be buddies.
I would think so. Missouri's D's been pretty good against the run. Will Howard's been, I don't know. I think Kansas State has the advantage at most positions,
And that hits on the same thing we've been discussing, the QB problem. Kansas State has the QB advantage in this matchup with Will Howard over Brady Cook, and that is something that the SEC is dealing with in non-conference games.
Luther Burden would start for Kansas State.
Yes,
he would.
Would any other notable offensive player?
Yeah, I think the left tackle they got is pretty good. So he potentially could.
Kansas State with Knoll legend, Trayshawn Ward. They've got a little like 1-2 combo running back. It's good. I think this is a disrespectful line to Kansas State, the reigning Big 12 champions. That's all I'm going to say about that until Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern time.
Stay tuned.
All right. LSU, Mississippi State. This one has got to be narrative and storylines because Mississippi State almost got beat by Arizona at home.
And they were +4 in turnovers and needed overtime to beat Arizona.
Yeah, that's right. Because it was 5 turnovers gained, 4 of them coming from Jaden Delora. And you needed overtime to beat this Arizona team. Arizona outgained them. Arizona had more first downs. Arizona, on lots of down-to-down basis type levels, outplayed Mississippi State in this game. Mississippi State does get the win. So can that Mississippi State team be able to make it interesting against LSU with Brian Kelly leading the Tigers in for their SEC opener?
No. I tweeted this stat. And keep in mind what we saw with LSU against Florida State. In 3 seasons under Mike Leach, Mississippi State ran the ball 25.5% of the time and averaged 51.2 pass attempts per game. Under Zach Arnett so far, Mississippi State is running the ball 60.5% of the time and throwing 23 passes per game. Will Rogers has thrown as many passes this season as he used to, or fewer passes this season total as he did in games the last few years. How did Florida State cook LSU again? Was it by handing the ball off and running?
It was not.
No. It's like, if you're going to beat LSU, you need to be taking advantage of that secondary. I don't think Mississippi State can. I don't even think Mississippi State's going to try. They're going to just run the ball into the middle of the pile 15 times and see what happens. I do not like this matchup at all for them.
Well, especially because the FCS team LSU played last week actually had some success running the exact same plays that Mississippi State runs, like the stretch play. LSU did not defend it particularly well. Mississippi State cannot handle LSU's fastball, but I don't know if they're going to get LSU's fastball. Like LSU in that Florida State game looked like they quit to me. Like they were very low effort in that fourth quarter. I don't think they were playing hard. They got really pushed around. I'm not convinced that LSU is playing at its ceiling. Like from a power rating standpoint, to kind of have a floor and like a midline rating and then a ceiling rating. I'm not jacking LSU up to their ceiling yet. Like I haven't seen that from them. I wonder if they got stuff going on there. I think the amount of talk that we had about the practice fight from fall camp is probably indicative of something bigger, just from reading some tea leaves. So do I think they win the game? Do I think they cover? Probably. Yeah. Cause I don't think you can run the ball on them super well, and getting Mason Smith back plus Wingo and those dudes, but they also can't run the ball. Like, can they hold a lead? So I don't know.
This one to me is a big, like, you're about to find out what LSU is all about.
Yes.
Like it's going to be, it's not the Mississippi State is old, as you guys already mentioned. The run game is going to be, they're coming at you, and it's like, how bad do you want it? And it's on the road. It's environment. You can hear the cowbell. Like, just, it's going to find out, like, how bad do you really want this? And I think, but then on the other hand, like Mississippi State, they struggle with Delora and his run game. They're going to struggle with Jaden Daniels. Like, I think LSU will be fine, but it is kind of one where you get a real good pulse for LSU is mentally.
Yeah. The matchup on paper screams LSU by 2 touchdowns, but the vibes, you would not jump on that with a lot. I would not jump on that with a lot of confidence because the vibes are bad. And of course that holds more value than on paper.
The note I had, and this was based off what Tom was talking about, I said, Will Rogers has to throw more. Like, I know they want to be committed to the run game. That's the new philosophy, but I don't think you're going to have much success. The good news is we've seen Will Rogers throw it before and throw it pretty well. So can you hit a couple, on him?
And that's the thing too. Like, if you're going to run the ball against LSU, I feel like you have to have a quarterback that the defense has to be wary of in the run game. And that's not Will Rogers.
Yeah. Very interesting. Any other Georgia, South Carolina? What do we want to see?
Can Georgia run the damn football?
How bad does Kirby want to embarrass Beamer?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
He's
Georgia,
put it on him the last 2 years. Like it was personal.
But Georgia is not running the ball at all, or at least well.
And also not getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, they're 80th in EPA per rush. They're 87th in rushing success rate. And you look at this South Carolina defense, it has been very bad against the run so far. So it's like, if Georgia is able to move the ball on the ground, I'm not as worried about the outcome here because I do think Georgia's probably going to win pretty easily. But if they struggle moving the ball on the ground, that to me is going to be like a red flag for them going forward. Although maybe not with that schedule. But yeah.
Would it be
Georgia's
hilarious?
offense looks like looks like the Kansas City Chiefs compared to South Carolina's offense right now.
True. Very,
I mean,
very
I
true.
this is one of those games you just hope Spencer Rattler survives. The amount of hits he took. I mean, for real, I'm not joking.
No, yeah, no,
The offensive line has been atrocious.
Also, like Beamer is a pretty smart guy in terms of like media and PR. Does he try to win this game or does he try to manage the outcome? Because like, are they breaking out fake punts and stuff? Are they going tempo, or do they realize like, hey, we can't block Georgia? We're going to go ahead and we're not going to do the tempo stuff. We're going to play an 8 or 9 possession game each, not a 12 or 13, not have Georgia put a number that starts with a 5 on the scoreboard.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to accuse, like I know South Carolina fans get mad about this. You guys are the best fan base in the SEC, et cetera, et cetera. Disclaimer. But like, if you know, you know. And sometimes coaches go into these games knowing like they can't block somebody. And that's very clearly the case here. So the intent to me is the one thing I'm going to judge about this game. Does Georgia want it? Do they want to embarrass them? How does South Carolina play it? Because I think South Carolina, using common sense, knows they cannot win.
North Carolina had 9 sacks against South Carolina in the opener and 0 against App State.
Right.
Some of that was scheme, but some of that
That's
also.
why South Carolina's going to not make a bowl. They can't block.
Like App State's offensive line might be better than North Carolina's offense. I mean, than South Carolina's offensive line. Right.
Might be.
Like that's a definite.
You watch both games. There's
right.
no comparison.
I'll leave it in the hands of the true talent evaluator. No. Listen,
I mean, you watched. Like you're putting it all on me because I'm gonna get the Twitter hate for it, but like there ain't no comparison.
I would give me if I'm a quarterback and I have a choice between App State's offensive line and South Carolina's offensive line for my health and well-being, which is clearly the situation, I would rather have App State's offensive line this week.
Furman had 7 tackles for loss against South Carolina. Furman.
Mm-hmm.
Furman.
He's one hairy man.
Tomorrow, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. It is the best time of the week. We will be rolling out our locks for week 3. So come and hang out, watch live so you can get the best of the numbers. Cover 3 moves lines. You know how it goes. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.